Well, I didn't think of writing fiction at all until I was doing some academic work, actually, a thesis on lesbian and gay historical fiction. And I was reading lesbian and gay historical novels and really enjoying them, and was very interested in how we write about the past in general, but the gay past in particular, and began to think, oh, actually, I could maybe try and write a novel set, a lesbian historical novel. The 1890s seemed like a perfect setting, the naughty 90s and all that. And so when I finished the thesis, I just kind of gave it a try, and that was the start of it all. That became Tipping the Velvet, my first novel. I think because I'd just written this long piece of academic writing, 3 years, solitary, so in a way it was a perfect training for writing fiction. It gave me a great discipline and a confidence about writing that I hadn't had before. So to make the leap from academic work into fiction, where suddenly I didn't have to have a bibliography or footnotes or anything, was very liberating. I remember that as being a very exciting move to make. I could suddenly, when you're writing about the past as an academic, you're limited to the facts. But of course, as a novelist, in a funny way, not having the facts can be a bit of a gift, because it gives you a license to fill in the gaps, to make things up. First paragraphs are kind of crucial. I think first paragraphs for me, I see them as setting problems up that then subsequently the reader is going to find answers for somewhere in the book. I suppose that's what I see beginnings of novels doing, is sort of posing something that then gets resolved, or resolved enough to be satisfying for a reader. I don't have an actual audience. I don't have a demographic in mind when I'm writing, but I am definitely writing for a reader, in the sense that I am trying to provide a particular experience for a reader. Because I'm a reader. Before I was ever a writer, I was a reader. I'm a reader at heart, and it's my own enjoyment of narrative pleasures that make me want to provide them for other readers. So I'm definitely aiming the book at somebody who is going to read it at a certain pace and hopefully experience things as I want them to be experienced along the way. I am pretty disciplined as a writer. I think I have to be, otherwise I just wouldn't get anything done. So it's always hard work starting in the morning, especially on a Monday morning. But I do write pretty much 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and that works for me. So even if it is hard work to get going, usually by 11 o'clock, I'm something is happening that feels a bit more inspired. But I have to do the work first to get to that point of inspiration, definitely. It wouldn't just happen by itself. I do a lot of thinking before I start writing at all. And with some of my novels, with most of my novels, I've had pretty much the sense of the whole plot, and certainly an end point in mind, almost usually a final scene in mind that I'm working towards. And things might change a bit on the way. What does change for me, actually, is the characters, is their motivations, why they're doing the things that the plot needs them to do, and how they feel about those things, which in a funny way is increasingly for me is the most exciting part of writing, because that's all about the dynamics of relationships and that kind of thing, which I find is really at the heart of storytelling. It seems to be all about plot, but it's really about feelings. That might sound obvious, really. There are some novels that, if I could, it's by some magical process, ping myself back in time, and they tend not to be the great works of literature. They're books like Rebecca, Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, or The Talented Mr. Ripley, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Novels that have a popular appeal, even while they're sort of pretty good literary novels as well. But I think all of those books, they have this fantastic quality of they've lifted something about them has lifted out of their point in history and sort of developed a life of its own, And I'd love to achieve that with a book of mine, something that something that develops a life of its own. Oh wow, what an interesting idea. Well, they probably would be things like The Talented Mr. Ripley. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Great Expectations, Jane Eyre, and something by Angela Carter, maybe The Bloody Chamber. So how many is that? And maybe something by Muriel Spark. I'm going through a bit of a Muriel Spark phase at the moment. So something like Memento Mori, that would be a good combination, because you've got the 19th century, all the sort of satisfactions of solid 19th century fiction with Spark and Carter, you know, something a bit more nimble and elusive. Yeah. It's a funny business when your friends read your fiction. I think I've never really based a character on somebody I know, on somebody real. I think I'd avoid doing it. But I think sometimes friends have seen themselves in my books when I haven't intended them to at all. You know, which I guess is a sign of a good character, isn't it? If people feel that the character there's something ringing true about a character, or it feels lifelike, I guess it's kind of a compliment. But it's a bit of a ticklish area, I think. I would want to avoid that sort of thing. Ebooks are interesting, aren't they? Because we're at this point in publishing where things are going to are changing, and I think that change is going to just it's only going to gather pace. Ebooks, you know, for me, it's just another way of reading a book on the whole, and I find it quite an interesting idea, especially if you're travelling. To take an ebook reader is a very sensible idea. I think what we haven't quite figured out yet is the impact that ebook publishing is going to have on the form of the novel itself, and that troubles me a bit more, because I'm kind of old-fashioned, really. I like a book to be contained. I like it to you know, the idea that I might publish a book and you could click on a link and it'll bring up an image of the house the kind of house I'm describing, or the music I'm describing. To me, I don't like that idea, because the point of writing fiction is to evoke these things through words. I feel if I need a picture or I need a piece of sound to help, I'm failing somehow. So that slightly worries me. And the idea that as authors we might have to produce extra material to enhance the sort of, to really use the resource, to use ebooks in the way they could be used, slightly bothers me as well. But at the same time, it's exciting. I think for readers it's a very exciting moment, because we are going to see books develop in new directions.